Hey everybody, how's it going? I apologize for this being the ugliest episode of TheoryForge you will ever experience. But there's not a lot I can do about that without learning an entire new skill that I just don't have. Um, Today on our show, we got me. Hey, I'm Sog. Let's go around here. Legendary neurotoxin.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
Phantom X is next, or are we going in chronological order?
Hi, how are you? Welcome to the show.
And I'm Diggs. Weird week, I guess.
Yeah, real weird week. We had some plans to have a guest from game Das Tal, which is a isometric MMO, highly PvP oriented. Seems to be a good direct competitor to Albion Online, another full loot game kind of like that, and we'll talk about that more. We do have a little bit of a story to share that Velix is still nowhere to be found. He's lost. He's somewhere between California and Colorado today, and is not here for our show. So we're making something up.
Yeah, he sends his apologies. I talked to him earlier. They just got behind, and he might actually get home in time to join chat, but he couldn't be on cams. So we go on though, and we
He's
are
only
going
moving across the country.
Yeah, I mean that's all. It's not a big
That's
deal.
not across the country. It's like this far across the country.
That's like maybe one time zone.
Yeah, it is one. It is only one time zone.
We will reschedule though, so I really anyone that wanted to see about Dust Hall, I'll definitely tune back in when they're on. It's a pretty badass game, so we tried to work it out, just couldn't. But we got plenty of other fun stuff to talk about.
We had a huge MMO Kickstarter event happen in the last few weeks, ending yesterday. A lot of people I know, people that watch this show, a lot of people have backed Crowfall, but that's not the only game that we've seen. Newer game coming out with a crowdfunding plan. Also, Saga of Lucimia started their Indiegogo. So it seems like a good time for us to talk about crowdfunding in general. I want to kick this off with asking a question to everybody. Why crowdfund? Why? Why do it? If you're a developer, why do it?
It's a different question depending on your background in development, what you've done in the past, and the scope and scale of the project that you're doing. Some things it's being done with crowdfunding because it's an indie developer. They genuinely actually need the funds. A lot of times they'll be really good about it, that they'll list out exactly what the money's going towards, different licenses and other things. And some of them they'll just kind of give ballpark numbers about some of the things that they're doing. Triple A's, they don't really give like an exact number for how the budget's going to be used and all of that. So it's a much different situation. It's also much higher risk reward sort of thing. The expectations are really high for something like that, and it has to deliver. But at the same time, it's the sort of thing where they can end up having to, because of deadlines or running out of funds or whatever, have to kind of break away from their original plans and do something different, or just end up getting picked up by a lot of investors and show like, yeah, we've got the initial funding to show off some of the initial stuff, but we're going to need some more money, and we'll of course be making it back with the end game with the product. So there's really a lot to it. Now, one other funny one that I'm going to throw out there, the folks from Broken Lizard, they made Super Troopers, then they made a bunch of films that didn't really do too well, so they're trying to make another Super Troopers. They actually funded it. $2 million was their goal, and they got it in like 24 hours, basically.
Well,
maybe
Super Troopers
36
was funny
hours.
as hell.
It is. So, it's they had some different perks, some various different perks that were kind of interesting. Everything from being an actor in the film for 10K, to getting the squad car for 35K, having private stand-up comedy show, drinking beer with them, baseball game, drinking beer with them, having them at your wedding as the grooms or whatever, just dressed up, not causing a scene.
Well, that
Whatever.
goes into like stretch goals, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about those. Right?
Oh no, those aren't stretch goals. Those are the Kickstarter backer or the Indiegogo backer rewards. All of those things. Like those are different price packages for people, but yeah, it's an interesting sort of thing. Like different projects getting funded in different ways. It's really interesting to see how they do it. I really liked what Crowfall did, having both the quantity of people backing it as well as the amount of money they've earned as two different ways to hit the different goals for some of the giveaways and some of the other stuff. So that was kind of an interesting way to go with things. I like that a lot.
Phantom X, Diggs, why do you think everybody is crowdfunding stuff? Or not everybody.
I would follow what's being said in chat. It gives you publicity while you're giving it a go, and it doesn't. I mean, it gets you some money potentially. I mean, what does it hurt?
Phantom X, we cannot hear you.
The only risk for the developers that I see is if you don't come through. I mean, the risk to them is really kind of minimal. You're not required to actually produce something. I'm not that they go into it not going, I'm just going to take money, but versus actually having an investor where you're kind of forced, you have to do something. I think the other part is true too. It is advertising. I mean, I think it was the Pebble watch. Their first watch was crowdfunded through Kickstarter, and it did very well. And they just did another one, and here they are, a multi-million-dollar company. And the question is, why are you going to Kickstarter to fund this? It funded easily by far. I think there's a lot of reasons. The others for it to get more backers too. I mean, all of us, as if we talked internally, is how in the hell is Crowfall going to make what they've promised with only $1.7 million? And I think part of that is that they now have hard data they can show to other investors. Hey, look, we have 17,000 people who put up 1.7 million of their own money without a true promise that they're going to deliver, hopefully, but not. We can show you people are interested, and I think that's a tool to bringing in more investors, because we've equally seen games that have not funded that have gone on to still not receive any investment funding from anywhere else. So I guess that would be the other downside, is if you actually didn't reach your goal, then it kind of shows that people aren't interested in what you're wanting to do. But
with crowdfunding, do you think there's a risk that as you start doing that, one of the common rewards you see is like how early you get to start playing the game? Do you think, like, if you wanted to make a game and release it as a surprise, so we made this game, pay $60 for your console game or whatever, do you think that you could pull off crowdfunding that? A lot of the games I see is like, well, if you're one of our backers, you help us test from the very beginning, right? Can you pull off? I don't know.
You get to play the sucky game even longer the more money you get.
Yeah.
Well, but you take Crowfall. Most of the pre-alpha testers. I mean, you had to put up a lot of money, so there's not very many people doing that. And even the people for Alpha 1, I think that was still like 500 and above.
Is that something you have to do though? Do you have to offer that? If you want to get people to back the game, I know Toe Jam and Earl has been funded, right? They're not inviting people to play that game a year before it launches, I don't think.
Well, it's still going back to you're getting people to pay to test for you. I mean, you still run the risk of them complaining about how crappy of a game there are, but you're not having to pay anyone, and they're paying you. to come play. I think you have to nowadays. Everybody does it. I mean, to that's part of the draw. Is if you invest early with us, you get to play earlier. You get to help us build the game. It's another topic that we could discuss for hours and hours. But
So is Kickstarter or a crowdfunding campaign, the way that Crowfall managed it was like the closest analogy I could give is like watching a donation chain on a live stream. It's like watching watching people just keep donating more or keep subbing to his channel and that kind of thing. What is it about this feeling that, you know, we as human beings have, where we feel like if we throw money at something, we're a part of it? I think that's like, I think there's this huge marketing power there of like building this chain.
Well, you get your name in the credits as a thank you.
Yay! If I'm watching the credits of an MMO, then something went wrong. You died. Game over. Credits roll.
I mean, that's part of it, though.
You know what?
You get to get in early. You get to say, "Hey, I was there from the beginning. This is a cool game, and I helped contribute $2 to it." But you know, it's excitement just to watch where it goes. Now it's going to die down.
That's an interesting thing that it works.
It's human nature.
I think one of the things that I asked Sog real quick the other day was if it's the natural evolution of pre-ordering. I mean, we already kind of got into that mindset, I don't know, a few years ago.
I think that it is. That is how you pre-order a lot of games now. I just wish, and I said this in our chat, I said, I want my collector's box. Like, I got my Age of Conan collector's box for $85, and I still have the like original art book and map and stuff. Now, like Camelot Unchained, it's like $600 to get a physical copy of the game or something like that for their pre-order. Man, I want the box. Nobody gives me a box now, but now you can get that box. But this is not just any box. This is a $600 or $700 box, and you get to say that you're a gold level backer or what. You know, there's this other feeling of this feeling of membership that they're really latching onto successfully. It's pretty neat.
You know, I'd just stand to get a Loot Crate box, and I'd be happy with that. You know, something to address that actually about the credits. Credits should roll while you're waiting in queues and waiting for the server to load and stuff like that. That way, you know, you actually have some way for the backers to be like, "Oh, hey, that's me," and get that feeling and screenshot it and tweet it out everywhere. Hey, look, guys, I saw my name in the credits while I was waiting to get in the server for the past hour. Yeah.
So how many of us backed? I backed.
Oh yeah, I got in at the earliest bird.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I did the lowest where you really get the game. $34 or whatever. I wanted to do. I was tempted to try to find more money because I wanted the name reservation, and then I'm like, oh man, if somebody steals my name, I'll still be pissed. But I don't have that money to throw at a game that's not coming out. I felt like I was being sucked into a, you know, free-to-play scam already. Like, I say scam, but I don't really mean that because there's value to free-to-play. I'm not anti-free-to-play, and I don't ever want to come across like that, but I got that feeling, exactly what a free-to-play game tries to evoke out of a player. I got that feeling. Like, how do I find $100 to make sure that I'm the only person named Sog in that game? But I can't. I can't do that.
But
Did
I think
not back, right? You're all revival all the time.
It's too PvP centric for me, so I registered, but I did not spend any money on it.
Okay. So we've gone in a little bit talking about. We briefly talked about how much money it really takes to make an MMO. And Phantom X brought this up that they asked for $800,000 on the frequently asked questions for Crowfall. It explains that they know that that's not enough money to make an MMO. They were transparent about that. But $1.7 million is still not anywhere close to enough money to make the game that they want with the team that they have. If they had somehow a whole bunch of people working for free, that would be different. But they're hiring industry veterans and professionals whenever they can bring them on to the team. When people, I don't want to say don't need the money, because that money will help them ease the stress of development. When people don't need the money, is it ethical to kickstart? Is it ethical to crowdfund under this guise of we're raising money?
Sure,
I think
they are.
it's a great marketing scheme because they're getting twice as much as they hoped for. So if they're talking to investors, it seems like that's a great thing to show. This is twice as popular as we were hoping. They're 17th in the games that have been funded. So I think that's a great marketing play for them. That much is a success.
I don't see any problem with it. People know what they're getting into when they're getting into it. To me, it's like it's just a free market society. I don't see a problem with it. If you don't want to do it, you don't do it. It's just because it's Kickstarter. What if they went and did the same? What if they put up a stand in Target or Walmart and did the same thing? Would it be a big deal? It's just all above the advertising money. Yeah, they hopefully will get money from somewhere else. They better, or they won't be able to create the game they say they will.
It's a little silly, but when you're doing a Kickstarter for potato salad, you can't get any more silly than that.
I don't think that. No, I think that's exactly what's great about Kickstarter. That if I make awesome potato salad, but it's going to cost me $30,000 of setup to get all of the right equipment, to get all the licenses, all of this other stuff, and I already have. At this point, I already have a customer, so I need money to build out a facility to produce something when I already have a customer lined up. I think that's the dream. Like, let's say, I don't know, I don't have a specific idea off the top of my head, but if you had something that you could make in your house, and you had people saying, I want to buy lots and lots of these, or I want to buy lots of this, or I want to place this order, but you needed $30,000 to kickstart the operation, isn't that what it's about?
I guess one of the nice things is also why some people would do that versus just getting a loan from a bank is that banks they'll just keep on just shanking you and shaking you for more money if they can, versus the Kickstarter backers. The best they can do is try to rally together and defame you. One other thing on the subject of funding, having people fund the game through Kickstarter, even though they don't actually need the money for it, aside from the marketing stuff, is that you also place pre-orders in a way before you actually have to say it's a pre-order. It's like pre-orders almost. Like, yeah, the game might have some sort of pre-order going after the Kickstarter, and it sounds like that's actually going to be the case with Crowfall, that anybody who didn't back it initially will still be able to get a lot of those same things if they buy in with a some sort of early access or some sort of other thing that they're going to do. And I've seen a lot of people do that too. But this is one other way to kind of sell units and guarantee customers before it is even in anybody's hands. One thing that I wish I could say is also that it'll help them get a barometer of how many people are going to be playing in the alpha, in the beta, and stuff, so they know how to accommodate with the servers and the netcode. But who knows if that actually comes into account.
So we agree that Kickstarter is a fantastic marketing ploy, right? How does that change basically everything? It changes business models across the board, right? That now Kickstarter, this idea, or Indiegogo, this idea of crowdfunding is really this fantastic venue for marketing your product before, while you're raising money to even decide if you're going to be able to produce it or not. Is there a better thing for starting up businesses or getting them going? You get money, you get publicity, and if you don't get your target amount, it doesn't hurt, and you have basically no obligation to succeed. You don't ever have to offer a refund.
I just find that the funny thing about me watching this for a game that I'm really not particularly interested in, these stretch goals that they're setting. It's like, potato salad. If you give me $100, I'll add onions to the potato salad. Like, shouldn't it probably have onions anyway? Like, you weren't gonna have the Minotaur? Like, is that really a stretch goal? I don't know. So that's the amazing thing for me, is these stretch goals that are kind of like...
Are they real at all? Is a stretch goal real at all?
Sometimes. I mean, they gave the 18K backers reward to everybody at the $30 level, even though they didn't hit that amount, or 18... was 180,000, 18K, however many backers it was. So, some of them, they were just like, all right, you guys got close enough. Here's the rest of the stuff we made. And I don't know how far up they would have needed to go before they, did that for everything, or, would they have done that at the 1.2 million level and just did it for some of the higher tiers.
Crowfall, I don't think, was a good example of stretch goals, because the stretch goals they use do seem to be things that should be in the game.
Absolutely.
Like some of the relics, those were sort of more like, to me, giveaways than anything. Hey, this is going to be in the game, but we'll give it to you for free if we reach 17,000 backers. There are other projects that I do think the stretch goals are more legitimate, like some smaller games that will say, okay, if we go for 400K or whatever, I'm just throwing a number out there, 400K over our top, then we're going to be able to port this to Xbox One.
Yeah.
There are some legitimate stretch goals, but yeah, Crowfall's kind of seemed like, hey, these things are probably already being made, but we're going to tell you we need the money to make them. And it's just a way to keep interest. I mean, how far can we go? How far can we go?
It's a mini game. It's a mini game.
There's definitely a couple of things that a lot of smaller companies will use the stretch goals for. That is definitely guaranteeing ports to different consoles. And then the other thing is the inverse focus. If it's a multiplayer game, that they'll offer a single-player campaign, and likewise, if it's a single-player game, that they'll be targeting multiplayer from the get-go. So that's the sort of thing, and a lot of that, maybe it would have been their goal to begin with anyway, but it would have been something that they would have done a few years out rather than integrating in the product right off the bat. Or maybe they were going to do it anyway. It's really hard to tell with some of those things. Porting things to other consoles, I mean, it's the license fee and the amount of work it takes to port all of the codes and the assets and this stuff. Fortunately, with stuff like Unity, it's real easy to port stuff everywhere. It's just a matter of rescaling the UI for the proportions and doing anything else that's very specific to the device, like not using sprites for iOS devices because it apparently kills them.
Well, that's funny. You mentioned Unity, because one of the great advantages that Crowfall has is the fact that they're using Unity and they're using Voxel Farm and they're licensing so much technology, but they're paying the primo license fee. They're paying the AAA license fees. They're paying $25,000 plus for the Voxel Farm license because they're in that tier, right? That
Wait, was that 25? I thought it was $250,000.
oh, it was one or the other. I may be completely wrong there. It started with a 2 and a 5 and it had quite a few zeros, but it wasn't the 275 up front and $20 a month indie license. They're paying, but when you put up a stretch goal like Oculus Rift support, like we already know you're using Unity. We already know somebody else wrote this plugin that this support for you. And it's going to take some work to make some changes, but you're right into the stretch goal underneath and other VR things when Unity support is offered. I mean, that's awesome. You can make a stretch goal out of work that somebody else has done, which is just great that you can pull that off. But you mentioned like ports to other things, and Goddess, the Peter Molyneux game. I'm a big Black and White fan. I loved that game, but Goddess, they were criticized because they're not going to be putting the stretch goals into the game that their Kickstarter said, and one of them was after $15,000 more dollars, they said they were going to make a Linux version. How does that $15,000 difference mean that you're going to be able to make a Linux? Now they're saying that they are not making a Linux. They can't do it. That was one of their stretch goals they can't do. I think you got to know ahead. If you put something on a stretch goal, you have to know that you can do it kind of whether or not you hit the stretch goal.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing that we've run into with My Dream. It's actually... It's kind of a laughable blemish because knowing what the project's been and where it's been going from after the Kickstarter versus what was represented in the Kickstarter, they're complete night and day different, and there's definitely a lot of backpedaling that's going to have to go on. Yeah, we're eventually going to have flying and faster running and some of the other features that we promised at some of the levels. And yeah, I'm sure whoever it is that threw down on like the 10 or 20,000 or whatever it was had dinner with the CEO and then played with her 3D modeling, 3D printing lab or whatever that she's got. It's some weird Kickstarter reward, whatever. But none of it is really representative of where we're at now, and it's actually kind of put us in a really weird position because we have to do what we can to kind of tiptoe around the situation. And some things we've been able to definitely improve on, like everything looks a lot better now, but there's stuff related to, say, the leveling system, for example, that's all completely off the radar, has been completely scrapped and will be replaced. So there's some stuff that people might be expecting that's just not going to be there because the scope of everything has changed since after the Kickstarter. Like right after the Kickstarter, in fact, is when the project manager joined the team, and everything pretty much started getting in order and getting more game-like and less like just a run-around sandbox, take screenshots sort of environment.
I don't think that's a problem, though, that if you're raising money early on in development and you have a plan and that plan needs to be changed, as long as you're open about it and as long as you talk to the people that are giving you money about how your small little stretch goal doesn't fit in with an overall plan that's going to make the game better as a whole. I hope that people don't get... we're talking about the internet and gamers. People get pissed off. People get mad.
Neuro mentioned something that does kind of bug me a little bit. Earlier, talking about how a lot of gaming companies, they'll go on after Kickstarter is successful or not, and they'll continue crowdfunding on their own website. That kind of bugs me a little bit. That was actually one of the things, and the only reason it bugs me is how exclusive is Kickstarter actually going to end up being. So that was one of the things I kept I kept sending tweets to the people at
Not one
Crowfall.
answer.
and they wouldn't answer me, and it was kind of, I think I was bugging the hell out of them. Finally they did. Gordon finally did. I was like, hey, are we ever going to have the possibility of like free tax-free parcels outside of Kickstarter? Finally he said yes, and admitted, they're going to actually sell different packages and other little things after the fact. But I don't know, I wish they would be more. They just wouldn't answer me. How much of these are actual benefits and how much are not?
Yeah, how much are Kickstarter exclusive? That would be
and
nice.
And I think it's understandable they wouldn't answer me, because if it's not, they're not going to say, well, later you're going to be able to get this and not get the funding that they want. But
well, one other thing I've seen with that sort of stuff is they'll charge much more for the things that you could have gotten for cheaper if you got it in on Kickstarter. So they try to use, I guess, that as a way to make Kickstarter still feel more exclusive, because you got to get it in at this price, while everybody else who wants to get in early has to get in on this price. I paid $30 for the early bird package. They might charge $50 for the same sort of thing later on. So that's. Go ahead.
There are some companies that are distinguishing between that I like. Like I think at Shroud, like there's a very distinct difference between the people who backed early on Kickstarter and who didn't. Now both kind of get sort of similar accesses, but there is a distinction made that actually goes on to another, because I think that's actually Shroud is where you can sell your account and they actually allow it to other people. But anyways. There's a distinction that they make. That's where I start thinking, is Kickstarter worth it? If they're going to keep selling the same crap later on, then where's the fun in doing Kickstarter?
I think there's the feeling of involvement and feeling like you're on the ground floor and all of that. I think that still carries weight. Let's bring up a little more risque topic. So let's say you are a developer that has a history of being part of larger companies and making pretty good games, and had some success here and there, and then you break out on your own and you start a Kickstarted project. And is this a little bit of it has to be a ploy to say, look, I myself am relevant, and it's a little bit of an ego thing for lots of people that we've seen doing it. I'm going out there, look, I've done this for these companies, I've done this for these companies, I've done this for these companies. Believe in me, and I will make the game that you have always wanted. Now, the big risk there is that reputation risk. Like, you just sold people on a belief in who you were. That's why people buy into Kickstarters. They buy in because they believe that the people that are there are able to produce. And I think it's about believing in the people more than the product. Am I going out on a limb there? Am I just wrong?
I think it's both. Believing in, I would hope it's believing in the people and the product. I believe in Coleman. I hated Shadowbane, but I loved Wizard 101, and I might believe that he can make the game that he wants to make. I don't happen to think I'm going to want to play this particular game because it's the same slogan, play to crush. But I think it's both, believing in the person and the product, I would hope.
I think the other thing is it's not just the person, it's not just the product, but it's also the presentation. In terms of the product, you can, if you're just showing a few screenshots or whatever and things that are in editor, and maybe some concept art, that's not really showing that you've actually, got something, working, or even a prototype or anything. It just shows, okay, I've done enough work to, make a Kickstarter that looks decent. when you actually get in the realm of showing a prototype, showing actual, something somewhat representative of gameplay, that's getting into much safer territory for people to be able to see, okay, these people are good, and to prove it, they've shown we've got a product here that we can actually see. But then the other part of it is presentation. And that is, how you lay out your Kickstarter, what your reward levels are, what what you get for the rewards, how you present your stretch goals, and also how much you actually ask for. I've seen a lot of Kickstarters stall out looking for really meager amounts, like 5,000 or less. They, took a lot of work to get through, versus, some things that just immediately gets 100,000 or more in the first hour or so. I mean, maybe not too many of those, but it's kind of an interesting sort of thing. If you don't ask for enough, I don't think people even take you seriously and think, oh, you're just doing this Kickstarter, just get a little extra in your pocket or something, or you lay out what the $5,000 you need is, and people say, oh, well, whatever, just figure it out on your own. So it's kind of a weird sort of thing, but it's part of the process of presentation with it. So it's definitely, I would say, those three factors: the people, the product, and the presentation. The 3 Ps of kickstarting.
But what's the collateral? And Phantom X, you'll be a good person to answer and talk about this, I think. What's the collateral? You're not putting money down. Well, you've already put some money down and some time down to at least put together your Kickstarter presentation. But are you putting your reputation on the line? Is this a I succeed or I look like a fool and I can't have a job again?
Simply by Kickstarter failing, I don't think you're necessarily looked at as a fool. I think you're looked at as your idea just didn't have enough people who wanted to do it. Now, the risk is, do you put out what you promised? If you take in $1 million and you absolutely do nothing with it, hell yeah, your reputation is going to take a hit. People are not going to trust you to ever do anything again. And to go back to your other question, I mean, I think it is also both. It's the people, and then whether or not their product is something you want. I mean, we had talked about this beforehand. Gordon on Crowfall put out this post on their Kickstarter page. Hey, go check out these other 10 Kickstarter games, that we all love to back. Because of the person, I looked at them. Almost none of them actually interested me. So am I going to back them? No. But I think the risk is real. I think as far as on a personal level, like, are you a good developer? Are you a good game designer? If your Kickstarter fails, does that reflect on you there? I don't think so. I think that's more you just didn't have something at the time that people were interested in. I do think if you fail a Kickstarter, you're not going to get funding from anywhere else, so you're pretty much going to be dead in the water. You better find somewhere else. But I think it's more of do you deliver what you promise, and if you don't, people are going to learn not to trust you, and that not just on Kickstarter, but I'm assuming other people in the industry will learn not to trust you. Well, you're the guy that took all this, that had a hugely successful Kickstarter and did nothing with it. So what happened? Are you just not very good at what you do? Do you lie and steal? I mean, because it has to be one of the two. What happened? That's the risk.
Yeah, the collateral is
you
your
could put out,
employability and your reputation.
Or you could put out a game and it could be completely crappy. I mean, that too. But by simply failing a Kickstarter, I don't think dooms you as far as your reputation. It's what comes after you're funded. Where I think it dooms you is just trying to continue to get funding later on, because you clearly demonstrate there that you don't really have something that people are interested in.
Or it's a demonstration of your marketing power to start with. And that's a big thing. That it doesn't matter if you make a great game and you're hoping on word of mouth sales because your game is awesome, you're still revenue limited, right? A Kickstarter is a good way to demonstrate the prowess of your marketing department. I think Crowfall was a fantastic example of how well they can leverage the right personalities and the quality of their art team and their understanding of the system to say, look, we know how to succeed at this stage. So you want to actually invest in this business? We succeeded at one thing, and we succeeded because we did a very good job at presenting it. We succeeded because we did it right. We succeeded because of this and this and this, and a lot of that falls on the marketing department. And their artists are very good. The way they presented it, the way that Todd managed to be available on Twitter or Reddit or on somebody's stream, every minute of the last week and didn't even look tired. I don't know
Even the month leading up to it. I mean, they had a countdown on their website of something's coming in 17 days. It's going to be here in 10 days. Oh, we're only a week away. Something magical is going to happen. Like, even building up to just saying, hey, we're doing, and that's all they did. Hey, we're doing Kickstarter.
I think Airship Syndicate would be fantastic at pulling this off.
Yeah, I think that's probably how they'll go. But
So,
go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing that we haven't really talked about with this is free-to-play versus purchased client copy or whatever. If it's something that you have to spend $10, $15, $20, up to $60 to get in versus possibly some sort of subscription even, versus something that's just free-to-play, just download it and you jump in. Are there really a lot of different considerations one way or the other for that? And I guess the other thing is, are there different considerations for a game that has ongoing development versus one that it's one and done? You make the game, you release it, and the only other things you're doing is updates and maybe cameos from other characters from your future games or other studios you work with. So I'm just going to kind of throw that out there. The purchase versus free to play, and one shot versus ongoing development. What are the different considerations, and does Kickstarter work better or worse for any of them?
Kickstarter for free to play, I still think it's more. Kickstarter really falls down to the haves and have-nots. Can you pay for this, or you can't? And so I don't know.
Or do you want to pay for it?
Well, that's part of it, but
How does I'm trying to understand the question. For an MMO, I hope that I hope there is ongoing development. There should not be a one and done MMO RPG. I hope. Here's the game, guys. Go play it. We'll keep the server up. Good on you. EverQuest has 11. So many expand. I hope it does.
What if you have the right technology and the right AI that you never have to add anything else because the AI takes care of it?
The AI
Right.
upgrades.
That's a
your
different
game for
discussion.
you. That
That's
would be kinda
stretch.
cool.
That's our stretch goal number 10.
The Skynet runs your game.
Pretty much, Skynet MMO.
But
I
part of
don't
it is that.
understand Neuro's question.
Well, not just for MMOs. I'm just talking about games in general.
You mean like Banished or Banner Saga or something like that successfully kickstarted good games, right?
Yeah,
They're put out. They cost $20 or 30 or 40 or whatever the price is, and they're good. But for an ongoing development game like an MMO or specifically a sandbox game that needs new features added all the time to improve, a la Landmark or My Dream.
Terraria.
Yeah, the feeling is different on how those games work, but when it comes to buy to play and still have a cash shop, or free to play and have a cash shop, I don't know how buy to play changes anything about, other than you don't have any, you lose out on some people starting to play the game. there are people that are very excited about buy to play. There's a cost gate. Well, there's really a cost gate to most free to play things, a cost or time gate, because you can't really play the game. There's always that $20 thing at the very beginning that gets you started on buying the currency or whatever. In Smite, it's the God Pack, right? The $20 you can have access to all of the gods to play. Oh, you just bought gems to buy that. Now you're in the habit of buying gems. Yeah. So instead, you just have to buy the game. So you immediately start with that artificial currency that you use to buy all of the little add-ons, and then you have a quest for how you spend that money to buy an extra outfit or something. What's the difference?
Let me ask you something. Kind of tying some of this together. And there's some stuff in the chat about pay to win and cash shops where you get to buy, things that are basically non-vanity that help you in the game, and whether that's right or wrong. What about Crowfall's stretch goals are a perfect example of that. Something that people don't complain about there is some of their stretch goals are relics that provide you a buff.
1%. Woo!
It is still a pay to win. It is still going to help you.
It's a pay for passive leveling advantage possibility. I don't know. I don't know that.
They're all 1%. That's such a minimal margin. I gotta imagine you could just chug a potion.
1% is not that low. When you're talking about passive leveling, which is a long-term thing, it adds up.
I don't play League of Legends. If League of Legends introduced some sort of buy to get 1% attack power over in such a competitive game, do you think people would not care?
They would all go back to playing Dota 2.
But do you see what I'm getting at?
They would. If you said that you got that for $5 a month, you got plus 1% attack power and plus 1% defense, it would be considered an absolute necessity for competitive teams, and it would change the game completely.
Would it, though? Like, how big are the numbers inflated? Are we talking, 5 points on a scale of, 500 or whatever, or 25 points or whatever in terms of 500? That might be enough that it ever so slightly turns the tide once in a million, but I don't really think that would be enough that it would upset the balance of a Dota style MOBA.
I think it completely would at the high levels, though, because these players are all so good that they're not really making mistakes. At the low levels, like when I'm playing a game, when I die, it's because I'm not as good as the other player. That when you're talking about that primo level of play, does the fact that you had a 1% advantage matter? And I would argue that because they're so good, it does. Where for me, they're going to kill me all the time anyway, and that 1% you give it to me doesn't help. But when you're talking about 500,000 people watching one live event, for a championship game, there's not going to be one player out there that doesn't have the plus 1% buff.
Let me take it one step further too. It's not like, so I'm looking at some of these stretch goals actually over here. It's not like some of the stretch goals, if we met them, everybody who back gets it. Here's the stretch goal at 16K backers. You get a thrall that gives you improved crafting. However, if you don't pay attention to the fine detail, it's only for people who have a silver or paid $100 or more. Anyone below that, they don't get that backer reward.
I don't get that reward.
So, that's it's just interesting that that's not really talked about much versus cash shops. And I don't know if that's just because Kickstarter is so new, people don't even think about it. But, see, even some of the other stretch goals that they put there that they didn't meet for 17K backers, 18K backers. They were still for only people who put in $60 or more. So it's not like everyone was going to be getting those rewards.
There were some forum threads and a little bit. There was a little bit of Twitter backlash about that, but everybody who posted something had a different dollar amount that they said should get it. You know, for me, the number is completely arbitrary. If you want to put a gate on it, put a gate on it. I'm not going to complain. I assume that it's a cash shop game. I am assuming that that's how you play the game once it's live.
Part of my point and what I'm thinking, as far as, again, why do Kickstarter? Why do we just throw money blindly? And it does. I think part of it comes down to the haves and have-nots. I paid $60 for this. I'm so cool. I helped back them. There's the coolness factor.
And I will forever have 1% more something or other than anyone can ever get in the future.
Which in the moment
is that one square.
In the moment means something. But a year from now, as you're playing the game, you're right. Are you really going to care that you can craft?
Percentages scale. That's what's nice about if you're going to take a buff, you take the percentage buff, right? If it were you get +1 attack power, at the launch of the game, that might be huge, but in 2 years, it might be nothing. But if you take 1%, if it's World of Warcraft, that 1% went from being the same significance at launch as it is now in Warlords.
I'm just saying those things are not as clear cut on Kickstarter as what you might think. That's just all I'm pointing out. Because the other issue I have too with Kickstarter, it's kind of off topic, but it's similar. Is when we were talking about, well, they offer at this tier you get pre-alpha or you get alpha access. In an age of streaming and YouTube videos, I feel like there should be some sort of mention that my default is if I paid you $100 for Kickstarter so I could do alpha, and you made absolutely no mention that I cannot stream your game, and then you're going to, there should be some sort of mention if you're buying into those phases beforehand. Now, Crowfall did do that. They actually, in the middle of their funding, said there will be no, there's no NDA, but that's the other issue I take up with Kickstarter funding. It's just not as clear, and hopefully there will start to be more rules, because we talked about, like, a lot of the developers seem to be promoting other developers' games, and this just seems to be the way it's going. But I hope they start clarifying some of those things.
Diggs, you haven't said a lot.
You guys are all over the place, saying some good stuff. I don't know. To me, it's a matter of are you offering stuff I'm interested in? Some of it, I think for me, like, outfits are important to me, probably more important than function. I'm fashion over function. So I might pay $100 to wear a cool costume that makes me look different than everybody else, more so than I would 1% buff that other people might not recognize. Yeah, it just all depends on what the people are offering and what I'm interested in paying. It doesn't have to be Kickstarter. Doesn't necessarily, it could be any kind of founder's pack. It just depends on the stuff that you like and what are you going to get for it and what you're willing to pay for it.
We touched a little bit on Indiegogo. I don't know how many of you have actually been on that website. Have any of you ever visited there or looked? The reason I mentioned this is you want to talk about a little bit more sketchy. At Kickstarter, they have to meet their funding goal, right? Well, in some other crowdfunding sites like Indiegogo, you can actually select, well, I want $10,000. But if I don't reach that goal, I still get to have the money that you promised me. It gets more sketchy as you go. But
is it just an extension of the free-to-play cash shop model then, extended to more than a year before a game's even available? Is that
A little.
is that the real, like, when we're getting to the crux of this and what Kickstarter backing does? Is that what is this the natural evolution of a free to play model? That the free to play model is, we're going to offer a variety of different things that you can have in a game, and we're going to charge you for them, and we're going to allow you to spend more and more and more money than we've ever demanded from people in the past. And is Kickstarter really just the same?
Well, it's definitely a big transition from the days of pre-ordering a physical game. The last physical purchased copy of a game that I pre-ordered was Final Fantasy VII for PlayStation 1. That was it. Like, that's the last time. As we've gotten more into the digital age, also I played a hell of a lot of emulators after that, so I wasn't buying games for a little while. But it got to the point where we stopped really needing to pre-order a game because there'd be limited runs of getting access to it. Nice. And over time, that's basically gone away with mostly digital purchases for games, and not actually having to worry about box copies, not having to worry about finding a store that's going to be selling it, and being one of the pre-order people that's there, so you don't having got a pre-order still not able to get the game, sort of thing. No, that's gone. It's if you pre-order a game, it's so you get a special avatar, or you get to play the game one day before everyone else, or something silly like. And that one's the worst for me. Is like the console FPS games and their PC counterparts. How they'll do this, like, you get to play the game one day early. You also get these special skins or whatever that nobody else will ever get unless they get the one of those cards that gives you all of the downloads and exclusive content for the console, which I'd gotten in the past for PS3. I didn't ever use it, but they, that stuff it bothers me so much, because it means like all the streamers and all the people that are going to be able to throw down on the $100 pre-order or whatever are going to be able to get in first, and then everybody else, gets to see it after and don't get to be the first people in, get to check it out with everyone else and all that. It's such a weird marketing thing too, but they make their money on it.
I want to. You struck a thought in my mind, and I want to ask what you guys think, or what you would do. Something that drives me nuts when I'm looking through the different tiers of some of these Kickstarter, whatever, crowdfunding, and it's like, oh well, if you give me $20 more, well, we're going to give you a digital map and a digital art set and a digital soundtrack, like nothing physical at all. That drives me nuts. Is that really worth $20? I read that, I'm like, I'm not going to give you $20 so I can look at a map on my computer that I can probably screen print off your game and create my own wallpaper. That drives me nuts. Is that something you guys would ever pay for?
I don't know. I think it just depends on what an individual wants. With Revival, there are people crowdfunding endeavors to get $500 to pre-order their $500 housing option. You were very interested personally in every kind of Eternal Kingdom upgrade that Crowfall offered on their list. But somebody else might be interested in the artwork and the soundtrack. For me, I like the idea that a $50 game I got for $34. And I wanted a name reservation so bad, but I couldn't do it.
Let me clarify. And I will look at things for if I get a print math. I mean, you can look at my back wall. I collect game math. What I'm talking about is the digital, like that you're going to pay them $20 more so you get a digital, you get nothing physical. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. If it's physical,
out of game stuff that isn't physical, you specifically. Yeah. Okay.
But what Saga's saying is perfectly apt, because it's not so much about whether or not it's digital or physical. It's about whether or not you can show it off. You can't really show off a digital map in any sense. Hopefully, I'll be able to show off my digital home in Revival. And that's the difference between me getting a smaller home or a larger home or a mansion. Hopefully, once I get that, I can invite people in to see that and show that off, just like I would my maps. Doesn't really make a difference that just like I would a physical map in my home, in my real space home. So it's not really so much a matter of whether it's digital or physical. I don't think it's a matter of how well you're able to show whatever you paid for off. And that's what we're really paying for, is to show it off to somebody, whether it's people who are coming into our real life homes or people who are coming into our virtual homes or seeing what we're wearing virtually in the game or using.
I mean, there's some things I could see as an advantage, like the soundtrack, for example, for a game. If they're actually giving you the proper set of files, that if you're someone who uses, iOS-based devices for music, that you actually get the right kind of files. That it isn't like, hey, this song might be a bootleg, I'm not going to play it for you. None of that sort of stuff. You're actually able to, have a real legit copy of it. Sure, you can record the music out of the game if you want to. It might, in the game, in engine, not actually play at the same quality that it plays off of the provided soundtrack. It might not have extended cuts and tracks that weren't actually put in the game. Now, one soundtrack that I do have for a game, that's FTL. That's kind of an interesting one, because Ben Prunty actually puts all of his music up on his website. From what I understand, when he does a soundtrack for the game, he says, you folks can use the music in the game, however, I still own the rights to the music and get to sell and distribute it on my own. So it's kind of an interesting sort of thing. I can just go on the website and listen to the soundtrack if I want to. In fact, I often do. But I have the physical version, or not physical, is it a CD, but access to the files whenever I want to. And I don't know if they actually play at a higher quality than they play in the game itself. But it's definitely a nice sort of feature to have. Once again, that isn't, definitely isn't for everybody. It's not something everybody cares about. Another thing, though, is some things that otherwise wouldn't be made available, like the digital art books and stuff. They might just not even show and share the all the nice artwork and stuff, all of the concept art. I remember a lot of the strategy guides for Final Fantasy games would have the concept art that I never saw anywhere else, and that was the only place I could see it. So I could see, things that are kind of exclusive. On one hand, somebody can just upload it and then it's, up there, unless they plan to, go through with imaging programs and get things taken down from the web that aren't supposed to be up there. The other thing is they can actually have a size of file that's much larger than you would want to put up on a website. You could have just this absolutely giant, super detailed map or whatever that's scanned down to the point where you can see like the grain in the paper and the the grit of the pencil being used to draw the lines. And if it's super high detail, it's something that if you printed it out in its full size would take up an entire wall. That's the sort of thing, it'd be a lot of infrastructure for them to design something like that versus, somebody who's really dedicated and wants that wall-sized map or whatever it is. They can actually get it printed on their own because they actually have the file that has the quality for it. So there are definitely some perks to it, but in the long run, I do like physical copies of things that come with, a box copy of a game. I have, I think it's Might and Magic 7 that came with the shirt. That's great. I still have it. It's totally ratty and falling apart for the most part, but I still got it. It's pretty cool.
It is personal preference. I mean, for me, the reason I bring that up is that I just would never pay for that. If I'm going to give you $30 more, I want a map I can hold. I want a book that I can put on a shelf. Not on a Kindle.
Oh, what? What was the last thing you said?
Oh no, I say like if I'm gonna give you extra money and for art, game art, I want an extra.
I understood map, and then you said something else.
Kindle.
Like I don't want to.
Kindle. There's some other.
No, what I said was for me, if I'm going to pay you extra money and you're going to give me, I don't want digital art. I want art in a book that I can actually set on a shelf.
Oh, yeah, that's that word. A book on a shelf. What is
Yes.
that?
Well, Diggs, come over sometime. We'll look. I'll teach you.
A book on a
I
shelf.
don't want to.
I think I heard something about that being a thing in the 20th century.
Hey, wait,
Yeah.
we're all products of the 20th century here, and you're the
I'm not.
oldest of us all.
Well, and I see Neuro talking comic books. Yes, I absolutely refuse to buy comic books on any of the electronic medium. I have to have the.
Comixology, say it.
I can't say it. I can't pronounce it. I have to have the physical book. I guess that's just me. But
I like the books too. I do.
it drives me nuts, though. Here, give me $50 and I'll give you digital art. What? No, I want. If I'm giving you $50, give me a book of art. Give me a poster of art that I can put somewhere.
I feel very much. I'm on the same wavelength as Phantom X here, but I think that it does have to do with the fact that we're products of the 20th century and not the 21st. It may be. I hope that people actually decorating things isn't a thing of the past, but I don't have a lot of things on walls in my house because I don't choose to pay for them. But I do have a Stargate poster. I do have a Battlestar Galactica poster. You know, I might put up a crowdfunded video game poster if I got a good one in the mail.
Well, and the other thing that bugs the hell out of me is just the cost. I mean, $20, because that literally is like, usually it's like $10, $20. How hard is it for you to put something, digitize something, send it to me in a file on an email? Does it take $20 to do that? That's what drives me nuts. But about some of the crowdfunding that's out there.
That's the whole
because
point.
Then
the whole point is that it doesn't. The whole point is that the goals don't cost that much more. That they're making money on it. They're not selling something. They're trying to they're supposedly trying to fund something, right?
And then they get to charge you $150 for the physical box that actually costs the $20 that they're charging you for the digital.
And $150 is low. Like the Shroud of the Avatar $150 is low.
I'm just saying.
That pack pig cost a lot of money.
Yeah, that pack pig. Man.
There's something else, because this is somewhat tied to crowdfunding, because we talked about the saga of Leucemia. I don't think I'm ever going to get to ask this question again, and because we're sort of off the cuff tonight, I'm curious of your guys' thoughts on this. It's a game, for people who don't know, it's being developed by like a very small group of people, and Saga and I have debated about whether this will be a successful game or not, and they did just start an Indiegogo, which I linked in chat. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts on chances of success. When you read, if you have a chance to read about it, you know, they're talking about no mini maps, no quest hubs. You have to have 4-man groups for anything above ground. You have to have 8-man groups for anything dungeon related. Like, incredibly difficult.
There is zero content for under 4 people.
Correct.
Now, and they say that, and they're proud of it, and I respect that they're making the game that they want to make. I've said this in our private chat and in personal conversations thousands of times. I'm excited to play a PvE dungeon game if it's lobby-based. If I just open up a little client and I queue with friends, or I create an instance myself and anyone can join. But to have open world content that can't, with nothing designed for me to do alone, I just feel like it's this close to the game that I really want, because I want a lobby-based PvE dungeon / raiding game. I want to be able to just like open up my little lobby, MOBA-like lobby thing, and queue up to join a group to go do dungeons, and know that all they're doing is working on dungeons, and there's more stuff coming out, that every patch something new comes out, and it's just a fun game about co-op content. I'm excited about that. But an open world where I can't where if I log in once to a video game and I go, now what? If I log in once and do that, I will not log in tomorrow. And if I go 24 hours without logging into a video game, the chances of me not logging in for the next week are very high.
One of the big perks of having that EverQuest and really, I guess, UO introduced for us, and that drew me in, is I didn't have to wait once a week or once every 2 weeks for my D&D guys to have time for all of us to meet up and travel a half hour, 20 minutes, wherever, and then spend 2 or 3 hours to play an RPG. Once we got these persistent worlds, I could jump on whenever I wanted to and be my wizard or be my rogue or be whatever. We got to be able to do that. And one of the things that we're realizing now is that pugs aren't great because you need to be playing with like-minded people. There are actually different mindsets, and I get this all the time because I'm like an 86% explorer on the Bartle scale and 0% kill. So me grouping up with people in a dungeon doesn't work because I want to go around and explore the whole dungeon while everybody else wants to go around and kill everything. And those two things don't match. I need to be with other people who are casual and like to explore too. So you got to have some system for who these 4 people are going to be that you're grouping up with.
What do you?
I don't know.
Your thoughts,
I just feel like it's not a game. That the part of the world outside of the content isn't a game. It's making the problem that World of Warcraft has already worse. That I feel like Warcraft, there's this really fun solo game, and there is some exploration that you can do, but that the end game of it is waiting around in the world like it's a lobby to find people to do things with. Now, if you can't do anything on your own, I just don't like I said, there are some awesome things. The videos that they've put up of what their dungeons look like and the stuff they're making looks really good, but it's not an open world. It's not an open world concept.
I'm going to be trying it because I just try everything. But
You're right.
it sounds like the perfect game for me in 1999 when I had the time to do it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what it is. It's a throwback to that. I mean, they were very clear about that. The games that you used to love. I wonder how everyone else, would think about that.
What games that we used to love?
EverQuest. I mean, all of the things.
EverQuest had plenty of open world solo stuff that you could do. I felt like.
But it took a special class.
No, it didn't.
Not every class could solo.
Okay,
But
I was
you're not
going to
play every class.
I'm just saying, you had to be a specific. I mean, if you wanted to solo, you had to have a specific mind to that. It was not the game was not necessarily created to do that.
Well, yeah, that's kind of like with everything, right? If you want to do it, you're going to do it. You have to have the mind to do it.
And I'm betting that with this game, that people will find a way to do that, but it's not being created that way. Whichever quest was not created that way. It turns out.
Yeah, but this is being created so that you don't solo.
Well, do you think EverQuest was created in mind so people could?
Yes. It certainly wasn't created so that you couldn't.
Yeah, there was a point that you got to in EverQuest where if you wanted to feel efficient, you needed to group up. And that was kind of cool. It was just, it was an interesting way that the world was tuned for difficulty of everything. That if you wanted to be efficiently progressing the strength of your character, doing it alone was not a very good way to go about doing that. But it didn't feel like from the beginning the game was designed to hurt your intentions to play alone. And the other thing you mentioned was that they're talking about it as a throwback. I feel like there are tons of throwback options now. I think there's a very tiny market for throwbacks, and I think it's getting really, really competitive. And if right now Project Gorgon is a pretty good game, Diggs doesn't enjoy it, but it's a pretty good game. I enjoy that. I've been playing some Shroud of the Avatar, but oh my god, I cannot handle this idea of you really do need to keep a notebook. Like, your character doesn't learn anything persistent that you can access in the game. That's not your character learning things in a game was not a design fault of the past. You know, giving everything to the character and pretending your character knows everything, that was a design fault. But I shouldn't need a notebook in 2015. That if my character greets somebody and talks to them and learns about them and learns their name, I shouldn't have to write that down and memorize their face myself. My character did that. I can get a nameplate then. Just give me the nameplate, give me a little journal where I can look it up and tell me that I have to go back. You know, there's
everyone in Shroud of the Avatar has amnesia.
Yeah, it's like there are some things that people think of as throwback, where really they're just latching on to poor game mechanics that we've improved on.
Well,
I love Project Gorgon, though. If I want a throwback, if I want to play a throwback game right now, I will play it. And I won't dislike it. I will understand that it'll take me an hour to feel like I've even taken a step. You know, that's that slow progression mindset of the era. But the competition in there, if somebody comes tomorrow and puts something on Kickstarter or comes out on the internet and says, we're gonna make a game and it's gonna be Project 99, but it's gonna have really, really cool graphics, I'm gonna be like, you're 3 years too late to make a throwback now. You know, we're no longer looking for the 2000s, we're looking for the 2003s. We want someone to actually make Vanilla WoW better than Vanilla WoW was, and choose some different directions on there, but still take some of the benefits that they added in. You know, you're too late. That was my long rant of the day.
So we have a question here from Baby Cannon. If you guys don't mind me switching this up here for just a moment. The question, seeing as how you think Crowfall's stretch goals were kind of BS, does that impact your view/trust level of the company and how they market things in the future? And the answer is no, because I still backed it. Like, I'm still excited for it. Now that we talked through it a little bit, it's like, yeah, maybe some of it was kind of some weird stuff, but at the same time, we really have no idea exactly what's going on behind closed doors. If it is the sort of thing that they needed to, get the game to a certain point, they've got, they're going to write on this for 3 months and then have the media press investor demo that they're going to be using to get more money. Because there's no way they're going to be able to make this game on $1.8 million and have the team, stick around for almost 2 full years to make it happen. On that budget, no, hell no, that's not going to happen. So, there's definitely going to have to be some amount of money coming from somewhere. And I wonder if the Kickstarter is actually going to be more about what they're going to have in for the press demos and all of that stuff, rather than stuff that they're actually planning to have in a finished state at launch. So I guess I kind of veered off a little bit there, but no, it doesn't impact my view/trust level. And in terms of how they market things in the future, if Crowfall is successful and they've got a future game, it would be a bit of a different situation because they would have been making a whole lot of money by that point. But at that point, I don't think they would need Kickstarter. If Crowfall is doing good, I think that's the only Kickstarter they're going to have to need to do. It'd be more maybe the trust level of the individuals if the game actually doesn't come through, or if they cut and run with the paycheck at some point and leave a big old gap in the project that leaves it hanging for a while. That's really more of a concern the individuals than the actual company itself, if the project actually does end up getting completed.
I gain faith. I honestly do. When I see the level of execution that they've put together for their Kickstarter campaign, I just gain faith in them as an actual company, and they're not a joke. That's what I've learned from the Kickstarter. I've learned that they will take what they do seriously. They will expend resources to do it right. They have marketing talent. These kinds of things I see as a positive for a company. And the idea of the game actually is something that I'm interested in. I am kind of excited, but I don't lose faith for them marketing well. Did I answer that right, guys?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't lose faith. I think it's something you have to do. It makes sense. It just says they kind of know what they're doing as far as how to gain interest. I mean, I think for me, they're stupid goals. I think they were already going to be in anyways, but that doesn't stop me from investing heavily into them. They have to do something. So they were actually probably kind of smart about it. They didn't put something up that was going to be a stretch to actually reach. They probably chose stuff that they planned to do anyways, and you can't just not do anything.
I lost faith in the players because Play to Crush is BS. Their stretch goals were BS. It's pretty much all BS, but people are eating it up. So their marketing is actually great. I mean, if you're going to ask me about my faith in their marketing, 17th of the games funded so far, that's great. They got over twice as much as they were hoping to get, so that was great. So their marketing is working. It's all BS, but people are eating it up.
I love having you on the show, Diggs. It's completely honest and not wrong. It's not wrong. And I am excited to play the game, but being able to market that well, I'll take it as a positive. We need more questions, or does anyone else here? We've only got like 5 minutes left, so anybody have something specific going on in the next week?
No. The only thing I'll say for anyone who's interested, there are 2 play tests tomorrow. Dust Hall, who was going to be with us, are going to have. Is it a new build tomorrow? Did he say, or they're?
They have a new build going up with some pretty good changes. They've increased the. It's a 2.5D like isometric view kind of game, and they've really increased the level of detail on the maps and stuff. So the videos I saw that they put out looked pretty slick, and they've also changed quite a bit of their crafting. And they're really working to get this game to the next stage. I'm pretty excited about. What was the other test that's going on this week?
Something that I don't think I've even mentioned to you guys in chat, but that I'll retweet a little bit on Twitter. Is Shards Online. It's another crowdfunded sort of thing, but they're doing a test tomorrow too.
You already have to have access to that, right? And it's the Break Our Shard competition. You get a
Correct.
T-shirt. You get a T-shirt if you can make their game crash. I think. Do you guys think that's cool? I think that's a really cool way of incentivizing people to really test. And
That sounds like fun.
we want you to come in and break our game, and if you do it, you'll get a T-shirt saying you did it. Are you guys excited for Shards? I'm not in the game, but I really like their ideas. I haven't touched it yet.
I'll tell you
I
tomorrow.
haven't heard of it. What's the full name? Shards what?
Shards
Online.
Online.
Here, I'll.
I haven't heard of it.
All
That's something we should do.
Independently run servers with. You can even change your different rule sets, and you can take one character back and forth. It's really like. It doesn't have some of the cool new tech that we see in games like My Dream and Landmark, but it's this idea of kind of like, I feel like make your own Skyrim mod for your own world that other people can come play in, and then you can go visit others as well. I may be misinterpreting, but the idea seems pretty cool.
I think something we should do later on. There are a lot of small indie MMOs, things that are out there, things that people probably have never heard of that we talk about, and people are like, what the hell are you talking about? At some point, we should actually just do a show where we bring forth all of these small independent games. I think that would be fun sometime. Of course, then we get to debate what actually is an indie game. Would you consider Shroud of the Avatar indie, even though it's so wonderfully crowdfunded, or Star Citizen?
Not a game. Not actually a game.
Isn't beta coming? Beta's supposed to be spring for that though, right? The FPS portion.
For
Star Citizen.
I have no idea. I have no interest in the game. So. I'm like you. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, there's a lot of cool games out there that if people are not aware of. Actually, if you follow me on Twitter, I retweet a lot of independent, smaller stuff that are kind of interesting to me, at least. Even some 2D MMOs that I've played a little bit on that are kind of interesting. There's a lot out there, and I think that's good. We talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of really cool ideas. Everyone's looking for the next gen, what's coming up. There's a lot of really neat ideas. There's not one game that, in my opinion, there's not one game that combines all of those really neat ideas. I think in 5 years there will be, once all of these other games are sort of tested and played out. But
Revival.
Revival is the only game, says Diggs.
People might think I'm crazy. I do think I've always said that there is, until I got more involved in actually monitoring and watching development and looking at individual games, I was one of these people that always says, WoW was a one-time thing. There's no way in hell that will ever happen again. They sort of capitalized in the moment, had a really well-designed game. It was just what the community wanted in the moment, and that's how it became such an explosion of popularity. When I start looking at all these individual ideas, like you look at some of the things Shroud's doing, some of the ideas Crowfall has, some of the things, Next has, if we ever see that. Even some of these smaller groups that have some really cool ideas, I could see someone 5 years from now like taking all of the little bits and pieces that actually worked and putting them into one game and polishing it. But maybe that's Blizzard. Maybe that's why they pulled tight and they're just waiting. We're going to wait another 2-3 years.
I think that the opportunity for that kind of perfect storm is coming up. Not today, not tomorrow, but I think that 4 or 5 years down the line, by the time Blizzard gets around to making another MMORPG, by the time some of these new ideas get tested and we see what the problems with implementing them are, that somebody with a really big budget and the time and the game industry knowledge is going to put together a new game that's going to take all the new things, put them all together, package it in a way that has a really crisp, clean, intuitive UI, feels smooth when you go in, and you never feel lost when you're playing. You always know what you're gonna do next. And I can only think of one company that actually does that with any genre, and they did it with World of Warcraft. They're now doing it with Heroes of the Storm. They did it with Hearthstone. We'll let you guys work out all the bugs with the system. We'll master it, and we'll put in every penny we need to make it in the right way to sell a lot of copies and maintain a lot of players. They do it right. Who else works like that? They don't care about being on the cutting edge. They want to be just behind it.
Well, that makes sense. It's low risk. You get high reward. I mean, let somebody else figure out why the hell it doesn't work.
Yeah. I think it's
I'm
good.
not. Why spend my money doing it? I'll let we'll never know with Titan, and not to completely derail this subject, but I could see based off timing. Okay, well that's cool. Everybody's kind of getting interested in voxels. There's this new sort of idea for AI. We're going to let you guys mess around with that for a little while. Let's see if it actually works. Maybe we'll come back later and build on that. I mean, that just business-wise, it makes sense. They're in no rush to put out another MMO. They don't need to.
No, they don't. And their expansion, I feel like it was received well. I haven't played, but it seems like the WoW expansion was received well. So, one thing that's going on tomorrow morning, while we're wrapping up here. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, we've got Contested Worlds, another show on this channel, and Lock 6 Time says that he will actually show up. We will also have Super Fancy Unicorn and Zube, and we'll be talking about. It's a PvP-centric show. Tomorrow's topic will be how crafting and in-depth crafting systems are ideal for PvP-centric games. And how and why, and some examples of what's coming that mostly is centered around Crowfall and Camelot Unchained. Not in the sense that we're talking about crowdfunding like tonight, but actually talking about games. What do we have next week?
I still think I wrote the best crafting system for an MMO. That was the one I wrote back in November 2013. It's pretty solid. I still want to implement it somewhere at some point.
We did have one more question. Upvote or complaints about newest landmark update? There was a landmark update?
Yeah, they put in the prop inventory, and copper is no longer how upkeep is done. You just log in, and your upkeep is fully restored, and every 2 days you log in or something, your upkeep increases by a day until it hits the maximum length. So, yeah, they've changed some things, and they've made things a lot easier and stopped punishing the players for not wanting to mine buttloads of copper. Whether they're going to put in a currency system or some other upkeep later on, we have no idea, but we know that the copper system hasn't worked for a year, so they've replaced it. So the prop palette's the other thing. You don't carry props in your inventory anymore, except I think maybe like some one-off things that you only get one of from the various different events. So, you don't have to carry around a bunch of crap. It tells you how many you've already got. You can disassemble ones that you've already got to get your raw materials back. So that's some really significant stuff, some major significant quality of life stuff for the game that I wish they had done a year ago.
The one thing I've wondered, you can definitely see the lack of having such a smaller team. I feel like their updates are obviously much less frequent, and then when you read through the update notes, it's just not. There's no real wow to it.
It's a slow clap situation for me. It sounds like good stuff for what Landmark is right now, but it certainly doesn't sound like a basis for moving forward. Sorry, Dave.
We got three things. We got the upkeep, which is actually pushed to 90 days max. That's the other good thing about it. We got the What did I just say? What was the other one? Neuro. What was the second one you mentioned?
Prop inventory.
Prop inventory, and we have the line tool is fixed. That's it.
Yeah, line
And
tool
it's
fix. Oh, you can fill putty now. You can put an area somewhere and tell it to fill, and it'll fill putty, so it won't mess with what was already there.
So
And
it's
you
not.
also have,
It's all good for Landmark as Landmark is right now, but it's not like it's not setting the stage for anything fantastic. It's not doing anything special, and it's certainly not helping me believe that there's something awesome on the horizon. Fixes for what's currently in place in Landmark are 100% not what I want to see done with the beta time of this product. I want to, but there are a lot of people having fun, so keep playing. I want to wrap up on a positive note. It's hard now. All right. Positive note is my butt.
Revival cast. Hopefully, we have revival cast on Sunday.
No, there will be a revival cast because I will be operating it.
nice.
I'm hoping that Diggs will be on it so that I don't have to be on it. But if needed, I don't think I'm going to be on it, but I'll be operating it. I will be ensuring that Revival Cast goes live on Sunday. So show up for that. Show up tomorrow for Contested Worlds. And I think that's close to a wrap, except Phantom X has something to say.
No, I was just going to say, we also, we're shifted a week, but the next 3 weeks, I know I said this a week ago, but the next 3 weeks, I think we're going to have some pretty cool people on this show, too. So
Next week is lined up. We can talk about next week today. How long has
Yeah.
it been since we've done that? Next week's topic will be what should games do to support their communities? And we're going to have a guest from a Crowfall-related cast called Crowns and Crows. His name's Valor. He's a big PvP nut and a member of a huge guild, so he has that kind of perspective too that I don't think any of us do. But that'll be the conversation next week, and we hope to see you all there. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a great night.